welcome to At America, the U.S. Embassy's American Center. How's everyone doing today? I hope everyone is doing well, and I would like to test everyone's enthusiasm today. But first of all, my name is Hasna Rohani, and I will be your host and also a moderator for today's session. And it's always been a pleasure to be here at America. As I said before, I'd like to test everyone's enthusiasm by giving a social media quiz. And the question for today is: True or false, holistic review is a university admission strategy that only assess academic achievements such as grades and test scores. You might type in your answer at any time during the session on our social media platforms. The lucky one who can guess the answer correctly will get a live shout out from us by the end of this event. All right, in this event, we will learn more about the holistic admission processes with the experts. And today's event is Understanding Holistic Admission. But before we start the event, allow me to introduce you to our amazing speakers. First, we have Ivy Cho, Master of Education from International Enrollment Services, Manager of University of Pittsburgh. Can we give a round of applause for her? And also we have here joining us today, Kak Meila Tupono. She is an advisor of Education USA. We give another round of applause for our speaker? All right, so without any further ado, I will join them in the red hot seat here. So, how are you, Ivy?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being here with us. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Is it your first time here at America?
Yes,
Hope have a wonderful time here.
I am sure I will.
And how are you, Kame?
I'm good. Thank you, Hasna.
Are you guys excited for today's presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Definitely.
And now, without further ado, I would like to invite Kame to deliver her presentation, and also will be followed by the presentation by Ivy. Please, the
Thank
stage is
you.
yours.
Thank you. Halo semuanya. Good evening. Selamat malam. Thank you so much for sparing your time this evening with us. Again, my name is May. It's really nice to meet you, and I'm glad to be here sharing the stage with wonderful speakers and our moderator tonight. So today, before we talk about holistic admissions, which is very important for you guys who wants to study in the U.S., I would like to introduce a little about Education USA at America. I know some of you really want to go to study in the U.S., um, and then we are here to help you out. So we are an advising network under the U.S. Department of State and more than hundreds of countries, and we are here again to help you out to study in the U.S. So, as you see in this map, we have 6 centers with 8 advisors total. 1 in Aceh, 2 in Jakarta, 1 at the U.S. Embassy and here at America, and then 1 in Surabaya, Malang, and Makassar. So these advisors in these centers are very approachable. You guys can go to the link there, calendly.com/educationusa Indonesia, or scan the barcode over there to book your session with our advisors. So you guys, don't worry if you're out of these centers or cities, you guys can still talk to us, had an advising session with us online. So you don't have to come here all the way um, to talk to advisors. But if you guys want to stop by here at America, you guys can meet me every day from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, so that's about us. And then if you guys meet any advisors, what can you talk about with your advisor? What can you consult or like ask? First, it's usually a common question is to ask about like what kind of schools can I go to? What schools do I need to go to? Does the school have a major or not? Or basically anything like where do you want to live in the US to study? So we can, and the first step here, you guys can talk about how to research your study with us, with your advisors. And then, and the second one, we can talk about to finance your study. We can talk about the scholarship options. Or is there any way to be more cost effective? And then the third one, which is we're going to talk about this with Ivy tonight, is about admissions or like complete your documents to study in the U.S. What kind of documents do you need to prepare? Is there anything that we can help you out? Yes, we can review your essay and CV. So it's very normal for you guys if you want us to read and give inputs to your essays or your CV, please come to us. And then the fourth is usually about visa. What is the difference between student visa or J1 visa? We can give you information about that. And then the last part is about prepare your departure to the United States. We can talk about what should you bring, or like how do you get resources to help you out to survive in the United States. So yeah, thank you so much. I would not add more. We can discuss this later if you have any questions for Education USA. So I think Ivy here has more prestigious information about studying in the United States. So Ivy, please.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. I'm very excited to be here and talk about holistic admissions, since this is such a big topic right now about applying to universities in the United States. Thank you. So before going into the details, I want to first introduce myself. I am Ivy Cho. I am an International Enrollment Services Manager at the University of Pittsburgh right now. We are located in Pennsylvania. I also graduated from Pitt 2 times on bachelor's, and also later on I got my master's in higher education as well. I was a former international student, so I studied at Pitt from Taiwan, and I usually, in my role as an international enrollment services manager, help students about questions regarding to applications, not just to Pitt, but also general advice about, what to look for, any questions about academic options as well. So I'm acting as a resource to provide guidance and information for all students. So in today's agenda, we are going to go over holistic admissions, and that includes application checklists, academic records and testings, about resume and essay, which is a big topic, and finally, any supplemental materials. And then we're going to end today's session with a Q&A. So first off, holistic admission. What does it mean when we say holistic admissions? When we're thinking about applying to universities in Asia, including Indonesia, Korea, China, Singapore, the typical thing that comes to mind is taking a standardized test, right? And that test score or your high school academic performance is the biggest piece of pie when you're applying to universities in Asia, typically, and that's usually the compounding factor. However, in the United States, many universities and colleges, we use holistic admissions to review the applicant as a whole. So we're not just looking at your academics, we're not looking just your GPA, your test scores. We're looking at you as a person, right? Grades are important, test scores are important, but they are not the only part that makes up who you are. We want to make sure we know the student. We want to see their personality. We want to see their interests, their motivation maybe behind what they want to study, what career they want to pursue. So really, holistic admission is a great chance for students to tell us, the admission officers, your whole story, because we don't want to just make you into another number. We want to see you as a person, and I'm sure each student has very unique stories, very unique experiences they will love to share with us. So, application checklist, and this is very general. Many universities have their own different checklists. Sometimes we require different things depending on which university you are applying to. So it is always a great idea to go to the university's admissions website. There is usually a checklist. It gives you everything, the bullet points of what you need to submit. So always default to the university that you are applying to. But this is just a general checklist. Usually, we would require an online application, and that application could be the application from the university. So, for example, University of California systems, UCLA, UC Berkeley, they have their own UC application system. Some universities have their own personal application on their websites. Pitt does, for example, and a lot of universities also use the common application, which allows you to submit one application but send it to many different universities. You usually also need to submit an application fee. It typically ranges from $0 to sometimes $100. Your academic records, so that is your high school transcripts. And when we say high school in the US, that means 9th to 12th grade, which I know sometimes in high school we're thinking 10th to 12th grade. But just remember, you always need to submit your 9th grade transcript as well. Standardized test scores. Now, this is something that has pretty much changed for the past couple years, partially because of COVID as well. So in the past, and back in my days when I'd applied to college, SAT and ACT are required. I had to take an SAT score, but not anymore. Many universities now decide to go test blind or test optional. So that means test scores is no longer a hard requirement for many universities. And then we have the English language proficiency test. This typically means TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo English test, which is another new one that has come up. So usually universities will require you to submit one of these tests just to prove that yes, you have met the certain threshold of English language proficiency, and you will be able to succeed in the classrooms wherever you go. And finally, financial statement. This is usually coming after you have been admitted or you have submitted your application, just to prove that yes, I am able to afford to study at your university. I'm not going to drop out after just 1 year. And then we come to the supplemental materials. Usually, the biggest one that we see here is the essay. And essay and personal statements sometimes are interchangeable for some universities, sometimes not. But the very central theme here when you're looking at either essay or personal statement is that you are writing about yourself. For example, in the Common App application essays, there are 6 prompts. And the very first one is, if you have a unique story or background or experience unique to your identity, please share that story. And all the other 5 prompts are about that, very similar to that as well. Basically, we want you to tell your story, tell us who you are, and that pretty much is similar with the personal statement as well. And then there could be also short answer responses. These are typically short in length with maybe 200 to 250 words, and usually they are used for honors college application or scholarships. Resume is one thing that some schools might want to see just to see what you do outside of the classrooms. As a student, we know that you spend a lot of time inside of the classroom studying, but in the United States, especially when you go to college, we want to see that, hey, you're not just a student that only studies. We want to see that you do things outside of the classroom, whether that's sports, instrument, community service, leadership, anything that tells us, hey, you are someone who has multiple interests, who has something that you want to achieve in life that besides just being a student. Letter of recommendation is usually a letter that comes from, could be your teacher, could be your high school counselor if you have that person in your life. But usually, and it could also be a coach. It could be somebody who is really close to you, maybe your boss if you have a part-time job. So it could be anyone who really has a either supervisor or that mentor guidance role in your life. It could be a lot of people, but some people that you can ask usually are your families. Anyone that has relation to you by blood, you cannot ask them to write a letter of recommendation. Portfolio or audition, these are things that are unique to art schools. So if you are applying to a art university, and I can take um, RISD on the Rhode Island Institute of Design, for example, they require students to submit a portfolio of art, and these can range from 10 to 20 pieces of art. Or if you're, for example, applying to Carnegie Mellon University and you want to be a dance major, you might need to submit a video on, or you have to go to do an audition to kind of show off your skill. And finally, there is also sometimes a requirement or invitation to do interviews for certain universities. And we typically see these happen with universities that are very highly ranked, like Ivy League schools. This is not required, and interviews doesn't happen to every student. But basically, you will have either an admissions officer or sometimes alumni or current students to interview. They'll give you a list of questions. It is on top of the application another way to evaluate you as a student, whether you would fit into that university, whether you will fit into their campus. All right, so going deeper into application fee and financial statement, common application I mentioned is a very central and very common one that students use. And if you Google common application, it will come straight up. It is very simple to navigate. Students, you just fill out your personal information. It will ask you about your background, your parents' background, there's a place to put in your activities, so your extracurricular works, your sports, whatever you do outside of school. And then you can fill in all the universities that you want to apply to and just hit send, and it will go out to all these different universities. Collision application is another one, very similar to common application as well. So you can kind of research the school that you are applying to, the universities, to see which application they take. And then finally, we also have university-specific applications. Earlier, I mentioned the UC systems. University of California has their own ones. So it really depends which universities that you want to apply to. Again, go to their websites, research, and use whichever one that makes sense to you. Application fee, I mentioned, usually ranges from $0. Some universities do not require an application fee, or it could be $100. And of course, I know this sometimes can, act as a financial barrier to students. And there are universities, a lot of us, would waive application fee for students if you demonstrate a financial need. So it doesn't happen automatically. You do have to reach out to the universities to ask for it. Typically, how students do it is simply email us, email the universities, go to the admissions website, find out what our email is, email us, and say, hi, I actually would like to ask for an application fee waiver. What do I need to give you to demonstrate that I have this need? And then you will have admissions officers, admission counselors from that university to tell you how to go about the process. Financial statement, very similar. Usually this comes after when you have applied or whenever after you have been admitted to a university. This will typically come in conjunction with getting your I-20s, which is something that you might have heard from your advisors from Education USA about getting your student visa. So financial statement is a big part of that, that you have to demonstrate that you are able to provide the financial support need for yourself or maybe from your family that you can afford studying in the United States. All right, academic records. Usually these will be your official transcripts. And these transcripts I mentioned earlier, it should be from 9th to 12th grade. However, I wanted to put an asterisk there. 12th grade transcript is not always required for some universities because when you are applying to universities, it typically happens during the application process. It typically happens when you are either at the end of your 11th grade or at the first semester of your 12th grade. So at that time, you still don't have your 12th grade transcripts yet. So really, you're only submitting 9th to 11th grade transcripts. These has to be in English. Of course, sometimes you might need to have them officially translated or officially notarized, but usually we will take official transcripts straight from the school. Sometimes some university will ask you to just do self-reported academic records, and that's really easy. University of Pittsburgh, for example, does this. So instead of asking your school, your counselor to send the universities your transcript, you can self-report them by yourself on our portal. Admissions committees will look at more than just your grade point average or what's your GPA. And we know that GPA doesn't usually applies to all students, especially international students. So what does that mean for you? We will basically evaluate the rigor of your curriculum. How difficult are the classes that you are taking? We will look at the grade trends from 9th to 11th grade. Maybe you got a C in 9th grade, but later on, as you progress in 10th grade and 11th grade, you started getting better, no more C's, you started getting all A's in 11th. And even though you got that C at the very beginning, we see that you have progressed. We see that you are working hard to improve yourself, and that still is going to show very positively for you. And then also grades in specific subjects. This typically comes for math and science, for engineering, since this major is gonna be very, very hard and based on the math and science curricular. We want to make sure that the students who are admitted to engineering have these strong bases in math and science, for example, physics or chemistry courses. And you don't have to worry about not having a GPA or not being currently an IB or AP or American curriculum, because we will do that for you. Universities in the US typically will do conversion. We have our own ways, conversion tables, and we will have our own internal process to look at your grades and then convert it to a US scale. So don't worry about all that detailed processes. We'll take care of them. All right, standardized test. I know this is a big topic for a lot of people, and sometimes people worry about it so much because you think that, hey, tests are so important. All of my friends are taking a test. I have to take a test too. So usually when we are talking about standardized testing in the US, we are talking about SAT or ACT. And then sometimes some universities require SAT subject tests like MIT, specifically for math or certain science subjects. But like I said earlier, the trend has changed. This is not the truth or not the universal truth anymore, because some institutions have new policies. So some schools you might see on their website, they said they are test friendly. What does that mean? That basically means, hey, we know that test is optional. You don't have to submit a test, but we would really, really love that you do, right? So if you submit a test for test-friendly schools, yes, it's gonna be more advantageous for you. Test optional, for example, University of Pittsburgh is test optional. That means if you submit a SAT test result, we will take that into consideration when we are reviewing your application. If you don't, okay, fine. We will just review your high school academic performance. So when you're seeing on test optional schools, it is really important to kind of take into consideration whether you think your test scores fall into, where the institution on average is. And one way to do it is to research the university's class profiles. And many universities publish these. So usually class profiles show you the either middle 50% range or the average of test scores of their student performance of the students of the class that they just admitted. So if you research these, you go to the class profile page and you see like, hi, yeah, my test score actually falls right in the range or even higher than this school's average is, or middle 50% is. Perfect. I can submit it. If you feel like, maybe I'm not feeling very great about my test performance, I'm kind of conflicted, maybe not, it's okay. You don't have to submit it. And then finally, we have another school institutional test policy that is test blind. That means whether you submit a test or you don't, you are all treated the same by the admissions committee. So I can submit a 1500 SAT score for my application, for example, and then us here can just submit nothing. We will be reviewed equally and the same. It will not make a difference. They will not even sometimes look at my SAT score. So there are the big three test policy right now that we typically see in the United States when you're applying for universities. And then finally, English language proficiency tests, like I mentioned earlier, TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo, depending on which one you're more comfortable with, you can choose whichever. Universities also typically publish the minimum score requirement. Some university has the minimum of a 70, 75, some has an 80 to 90, and some has 100 and above. For TOEFL, for example, IELTS we typically see a minimum requirement of 6 or maybe 7. Duolingo would typically see the minimum of 120 or maybe 125, depending on which university you are applying to. Sometimes we have exceptions. Sometimes we don't require students to submit them. And this is typically for students who come from a country that has English as your first language. For example, Australia, the United Kingdom, Canada, or for students who have spent a very long time studying in schools with curriculums that are particularly instructed in English. So maybe you went to an American school or a British school and all your subjects are taught in English and you have been in that school for more than 4 years, then that could be a possibility for us to waive your English language proficiency test. All right, going into supplementals. Essays, let's talk about that. Essays can be very intimidating, I'm sure, because all of a sudden you are asked to talk about yourself and you have to write it out on paper. So that sometimes can be a big challenge. Usually in Asia, we are taught to be humble. Don't talk about yourself too much. Don't brag. You're just a regular person. Like being humble is a nice virtue. However, your essay here, typically, especially for the United States applications for colleges, this is your spotlight. This is your chance to shine. And if you want to brag about yourself, this is the place. We want to make sure that students, when you're writing your essays, read the instructions carefully, read the prompts carefully. How many words do you need to have? So typically for essays, we're asking maximum 650 words. Answer the question that is asked again, write very clearly and concisely. And I want to stress on concisely. So some students think that when we're writing essays, we want to use big, very difficult vocabularies to kind of impress the admission committee, impress the admissions officers. You don't really have to do that. And I can tell you as an admissions officer, reviews, applications, we review so many applications a day and we read so many essays. And when the essay is hard to read, when the sentences are super long, it makes our job more difficult and makes us not want to read your essay. So sometimes writing clearly and concisely, sometimes using shorter sentences, but just get straight to your point can be really helpful in your case, actually. Using proper grammar and proofread your work, again, that goes back to making your essay easy to read for the admissions committee. Using your personal voice, this is the part where it comes to, using your active personal voice, using I statements instead of passive voice, passive sentences, because we want to make sure that you are telling the story from your own perspective. Highlight, but do not list your skills. So, what does that really look like is that you're telling stories about what you can do, what you're capable of, instead of listing them out like bullet points. You want to make sure that you are making yourself standing out from the crowd. Yes, you are a student. We know you are a teenager, very likely. But you are not just your friend who is next to you. You are not your classmate, right? You are your own person, and you have your unique personal identities, backgrounds, your experience. It is impossible, even if you have a twin, that you are exactly like the person next to you. So we want to make sure that you know that you can highlight that. You can talk about yourself, what makes you different and what makes you special, what makes you the right fit of the university that you are applying to. And finally, we want you to be unique, be creative, and most importantly, be yourself. Authenticity is very important because you might write what you think we want to hear, but really, we just want to hear your story. We want you to be honest, be truthful, and be yourself. Resume tips. If you ever have to submit a resume, keep it short. Don't do more than 1 pages. Use a list format, so this is where the bullet points comes in. You can include activities like volunteering, community service. If you are in any leadership position, maybe you are the president of your high school club. If you have done any research, if you have worked part-time before, any clubs, boards, organizations that you're part of. And typically, how we want to see this is that you are listing them out on your resume, kind of like a job experience, and you can highlight them to show your teamwork skills, that you have done teamwork before, you are a team player, or you have special skills like you can speak other languages, you maybe know how to code, you have some programming languages under your belt, or maybe you are part of Model United Nations, you have public speaking skills as well. So resume is a great way to kind of showcase that I have these skills that maybe will not reflect in my transcripts or in my class subjects or my coursework. These are things I have done outside of the classroom in my own free time because I am so passionate in them. These are the things I want to bring to the university. All right, and then letters of recommendations. Typically, some universities will ask you to submit at least one or up to 3 letters of recommendations. Some universities don't require you to submit them at all. For example, University of Pittsburgh, we don't need them. But if you are applying to a university that says, hey, we need one, make sure that you choose someone who knows you well. We don't want them to just write you a generic letter. Hey, John is a great student. I really like him. That's it. Well, obviously, we know, but we want more details, right? So somebody who can provide examples of your relevant skills. Maybe it's a teacher who has supervised you in your club work. They know that, hey, maybe you are in leadership position, or that you did really, really well in a competition, or they have seen you being a team player before. Somebody who can provide real stories and examples of, whatever you want to highlight. And make sure that it's not a family member, because we are sure your mom and dad will write many, many good things about you, and we are sure of that, so it cannot be a family member. We want to make sure that, when you are submitting your letter of recommendations, before you do that, we want you to prepare your recommenders, because sometimes they don't know what exactly they should do, right? So make sure that you are sharing these relevant information with them. Make sure that they know which schools you are applying to, so they can kind of look up the school, research, and be prepared. Maybe you can share with them your essay, your resume, or even your transcript, just to give them a refresher of, what skills you want them to highlight. And you can provide any specific experience as well if there are specific bullet points, specific stories that you want them to write about. Please give them ample time. Maybe the deadline is November 1st, and you told your teacher, "Hi, I am applying to University of Pennsylvania, and I want you to write a letter for me. And the application deadline is 2 days away. Please do it ASAP." I don't think that's a great idea. Please give them ample time to write your letter so they can write it carefully, they can write it with more details, they will have time to proofread them. And finally, please thank them. This is a very big deal and this is a lot of work for them to do for you. So again, provide them information, provide them, any help, any examples that you want them to write about, give them time, and make sure to show them your appreciation. Here are some potential recommenders that you can ask for. They could be your teacher, they could be a school counselor, it could be your coach if you are in sports, or if you are doing any instruments, if you are in a band, or your supervisor from work even. All right. Portfolios and auditions, earlier we quickly went over it. It's usually for art schools and schools that are dedicated to some sort of performance. They might be required, especially for certain universities that have very competitive fine arts, music, or dance, or creative writing programs. Make sure you start preparing early because this is a lot of work to do. Like I said earlier, some universities for arts might require 12 to 20 pieces of artwork. And they might need to see one about line work. Sometimes they want to see multimedia art. Sometimes they want to see scenery or some watercolor. So really, it depends on what the universities want to see, but it takes time. So make sure that you are starting at least a year early. And you can also use your old works before. So if you have been collecting your artwork since your ninth grade, you can still use those. But make sure that you are choosing the pieces. You're really curating them. And these pieces should show that should show what type of student you are. All right. Again, showcase your best work. Make sure that whatever pieces you're choosing is going to represent who you are. It's going to represent your skills. Know what the university is looking for. Again, these goes back to doing the research. You can go to the universities on their admissions page and it will tell you really exactly what you need to submit. How many pieces of line work, how many pieces of maybe scenery or landscapes you need to submit. And you can also talk about your portfolios in your essay, maybe your creative process, maybe your inspiration, your personal statement as an artist as well. All right, now comes to the big shot here, how to ace your interview. So you want to make sure that you research and you knew this institution that you're interviewing for inside out. Because interview is face-to-face, you're talking to a real person. They are not just reading something. When you're interacting face-to-face with a person, it's really easy to come across as not prepared if you really didn't know anything about that university. So make sure that you are researching the institution in advance. And this is very, and sometimes it can be very helpful for you to, go onto YouTube, go to this university's admissions page. Maybe you watch some vlogs that some current students did to familiarize yourself with the vibe or the vibe and also the sorry, I'm trying to think of the word, like what the university looks like, what do they care about, the mission statement, their mission and vision statements, that type of stuff. You definitely need to be prepared to describe yourself because usually your interviewer's first question to you is, please tell me something about yourself, who are you? So be prepared to do a short description of yourself, short introduction, and maybe even an elevator pitch about why you're a good student, why are you a good fit. And this is where the research of the institution comes in very handy because they will ask, okay, we know you're a great student because obviously we are offering you an interview, but why are you interested in us? Like, why do you want to apply to this university? So, this is the part where you might talk about, hey, you have this very specific program that I can't really find at other universities, or you have this professor who has done this very specific research in this field, and he is like the best in the entire world, and I really, really want to study with him. So it has usually it will be very helpful if you are specific, or specifically why you would be a good fit, what you could bring to the university. Because yes, we know we are admitting students, but as a student, what are you bringing to the universities? And also, you can ask the interviewer questions too. It is both ways. So they will ask you questions, and you can also ask them anything. It could be, what is the student experience? What are some supports or resources that you offer specifically for international students, right? Anything that you have in mind that you're curious about. Make sure that you're practicing interview with a teacher, a counselor, or a friend, somebody who is objective, somebody who can give you kind of a feedback. Make sure you're dressing appropriately. Usually, semi-formal to formal is the best way to go. Double check the time and location. Don't be late. Don't be at the wrong place and time. Don't miss your interview because it will look very badly on you. And finally, yeah, relax, smile, and be yourself because if you're all tightened up, you're nervous, obviously that person will see it too. And people are offering you interview because they know you are a great person. You are already, you know, they already know that you are a great student. So be yourself. That's who they want to see. And finally, in the end, thank the interviewer personally. And also, it always doesn't help to write a follow-up thank you note. All right. Now, as a high school student, you haven't applied to universities yet. What can you do to prepare right now? Number one, learn. Because obviously, as a student, that is your first job. Take courses that challenge you at an appropriate level. And this typically applies most to students who could be in a American, British, AP, or IB curriculum. So in IB, for example, students can challenge themselves by taking a higher level course, or in American curriculum, taking an AP course or an honors level course, just to show, yes, I am a student who is really ready to take my academic career to the next level, and I'm ready to push myself to take a more difficult class to kind of show that I can handle the academic rigor. Work on your English skills to prepare for the tests, essay, and interviews. If you have to take TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo, probably very common to take it more than one time. A lot of students don't ace it on the first try. Like I take TOEFL probably 2 or 3 times when I was in high school. So work on your English skills, work on the test, work on your essays for sure. And I tell students if you are going to apply sometime maybe in November or by the end of that year, start working on your essay at least starting in summer. And if you are a younger student, maybe if you're in ninth or 10th grade, you're so early, so far away, you're like, I don't have to worry about college at all. No, now is your time to explore, to really jumpstart on exploring potentials and maybe opportunities for you. What are some career paths that you want to do? Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to work in business? Are you really interested in doing art or maybe political science? Explore that career path because we always tell students that college might seem like an end goal for you right now, but it really isn't. There are a lot of things that are going to happen after college, and university really is just a tool and a resource. It's a mid-ground, a stepping stone for us to help you to get to where you want to be after you graduate. So, what do you want to do eventually? And how can you use university as a stepping stone, as a resource to get to where you want to be? Practice. We want to make sure that while you are still in high school, you are already getting that real world experience through maybe research, volunteering, job shadowing, or working in your desired field. And this is going to be very helpful, or you might be able to showcase them in your extracurricular activities or your resumes to show the admission officers that, yes, I want to study mechanical engineering, and I am already starting to do research. I am already shadowing or being an intern at this tech company. That shows that I am really dedicated. I have this intellectual curiosity, and I really, really want to pursue this academic field. Or you can join clubs or organizations focused on your field of interest. It could be a club in your high school, or if you are interested in leadership positions or doing community work, join some nonprofit organizations. You can do volunteer work. I've seen students who are really interested in climate change, in sustainability, so they work in a community doing volunteer works to kind of give back and transform their community to meet that sustainability goal. And finally, connect. And this is typically for students who are in your 11th grade. Start connecting with the universities that you are interested in. So at this time in 11th grade, you should already be starting to put out a list of universities that you want to apply to. And just go down the list to connect with the universities, to research them. Universities typically have virtual events that we publish online. Usually we have information sessions. For example, if you search University of Pittsburgh and you say info sessions, there are hundreds of them, and you can search date and time, when do you want to do it. And these virtual events are really helpful because these comes from the admissions office, the admissions officers. They tell you exactly what you need to do to apply to the universities. Join the email list. Sometimes we send out really good emails to remind you, hey, the deadline's coming up. Remember to submit your essay. Remember to submit your application. Or scholarship deadline is this date. Make sure they are submitting your supplemental essays so you can qualify for that scholarship. So sometimes they can be really helpful. Or follow us on social media. We are in 2023. Everybody has social media. Some universities have TikToks. So social media can be another way, alternatively, onto email list to make sure you're getting your notifications. And finally, contact your school counselor if you have them to help you with your application, maybe to give your advice on your essay, or contact your Education USA advisors or your university counselor with any questions that you have. And don't be afraid to bother us. This is literally our job. We are here to help, and you said earlier she is here 1 to 9 p.m. every day that you can meet with her. Us too, our inbox is always open. You can always email any university counselor with your questions. So, at the end, I want to make sure to talk about how to submit a strong application. Typically, when we're looking at a strong application, we see that the students have started to prepare in advance, that they have started preparing at least 6 months to a year before the application deadline. The students have checked institution's website, they have researched it, they know what is needed, and they have followed the instructions very carefully. And regarding extracurricular activities, resumes, the things that you have done outside of your classroom, focus on quality over quantity. Some student thinks, okay, I want to do everything. I want to be in business club, I want to do swimming, I want to do violin, I also want to do community service, I also want to volunteer at this local dog shelter. They're doing 100 million things, and they're spending only very little time on each. Focus on quality. We would much rather that you focus on 1 or 2 things, and you are really, really working in them, and you are putting a lot of time and energy and effort in them, versus doing 100 million things and not really focus on anything. A good strong application also provide context about any application materials that may be weak or missing. So this could come through with your essay. This could be additional information that you put in your common application section. And typically, what does this mean about materials that may be weak or missing? It could be, for example, that in your ninth grade, you might miss class for maybe 6 weeks because you were sick or something happened, and you can write about it in your essay or in a common application additional information section. Or maybe you can ask your counselor, your teacher, to write about it in a letter of recommendation just to explain that extenuating circumstances. And clearly explain why you are interested in our institution, right? You are applying to our university specifically. Why? Why made you choose us? There are so many universities out there, and just in the United States, there are hundreds and thousands of them. Why us? And especially if we are your top choice, if you're like, I really, really want to apply to your universities, if you admit me, I will definitely go, let us know because we love to hear that students love our universities. And I'm sure this is the same for any other university counselors too. So if your university is your top choice, please let them know. And finally, a strong application shows very clearly your own story. Again, it's an application, but really it's a portfolio. It's a small package of your life about who you are. And when you are doing this application, you are really curating your own story. So make sure you are telling us everything you would like us to know about you. And again, my name is Ivy Cho. Here's my email. I am here as a resource, so if you have any questions, you would like to connect afterwards, feel free to email me or, ask your questions during our Q&A session that's coming up.
All right, thank you very much, Ivy and Kak Mike. Can we give a round of applause for them? Thank you very much for your comprehensive explanations on the presentation. So before we pass the microphone to the floor to get questions from the audience, there is something that I would like to ask, especially for you, Ivy. So I've seen the standardized test was kind of separated from the circular diagram. And if the case is I have taken the SAT or ACT test and I have received the result and the result turns out isn't that high, isn't that good. And the university that I'm about to apply to treat it as an optional. How would you recommend me? Should I submit my SAT result or I should not submit it?
Yeah, that's a great question. If the university is test optional or even test blind, and then you got your result, you're like, I don't feel really good about it. Yeah, just don't submit it. It's totally fine. We will not know if you don't submit it.
All right, I see. What about you, Kame? Do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, sometimes we also advise our students because it's a common thing that our students ask usually. But sometimes it depends. We give it back to him or like the advisee. Like, how do you feel about that? If you do not feel confident enough, then maybe we should just, not submit it. But sometimes they are also keen on like, oh, I'm gonna retest, see what's the second score would be, and then like if it is high enough that I'm gonna submit it. But yeah, again, if it is for them, it's not too good and they don't want to take another task, so we usually just like, oh, omit it, not to submit it. Yeah.
All right. So we can less focus on the standardized test, and instead we can just put more supplementary materials to support our admissions. So the next question that I would like to ask is, so you have different proportions towards the standardized test, the academic achievement, and also the supplementary materials. Do schools at the United States have exact ratio, exact portion, like the exact number of percentage of each factors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it really depends on the institution. So you will see a lot of state universities, and I'll take University of Pittsburgh for example, or maybe Purdue University. We're looking at academic performance on first, and that can be the bigger portion of the pie. And that's the baseline that we would know. Okay, this student is great. They can survive at our university. If they go to class, they will understand what the professor is talking about. So that usually comes first, and then we look at extracurricular activities, essays, any other supplemental materials. But I would say one thing that students might think that admission officers do is like we're really, using a big lens, like, okay, this is not good, cross off. That is not true. We are always looking for reasons to admit students. We are looking at your strong suits, we're looking at your highlights. We are not like cross off. Okay, you did swimming and you got a, I don't know, silver medal instead of gold. Cross off. That's not true.
So the academic achievement almost always has a big portion compared to other factors. However, the supplementary materials and also the standardized tests can be another reason that you will get accepted in the United
Right.
States schools.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, I'm just gonna add one more thing. And I'm talking mostly about universities, like four-year colleges. But if you're applying to art schools or very technical colleges, that might not be true. For example, art schools, they are gonna put maybe a lot more weight on the student's portfolio.
I could agree on that. Okay. Um, we have another question. So, speaking about the academic record, um, there are students that have not taken the international curriculum, especially here in Indonesia. And it will be an advantage for them who have taken the IB, the AP classes, the A level, and so on. And however, do universities or schools in the United States provide different deadlines towards who those who have taken the international curriculum and for those who have not, since it will take some time for the university to convert the grades into the US scale.
Yeah, that's a great question. No, there is no different deadlines. The deadlines is usually all the same for all students. But I know some students are worried that they are taking national curriculum instead of, IB or AP. Don't worry. We really do not penalize students just because you don't have certain AP or IB courses. No, we work very hard to make sure that when you submit your applications, we're looking at the conversion instantly. We're doing our work prepping your application so we can send them to the committee for us to review. So submit your application by deadline. That's all I have to say. And yeah, let us do the work.
Okay, the main thing is be on time.
Yes,
No
be
matter
on
what
time.
it is. And how about you, Kame? How do you um, advise your advices who are feeling worry about their grades to in order to submit their application to their prospective universities?
Yeah. So, yeah, sometimes grades is very a kind of concerning for the students, especially when they are coming from national schools sometimes. But again, it's not the only factors that you get into the universities in the US. Sometimes you also have to pay attention to your essays, to your CVs, and sometimes probably the other thing that is very concerning for the students is that they're busy at school, and in Indonesia especially, sometimes even in the 12th grade, 11th grade, they're already busy preparing for university, so they do not have time to go outside or get leadership activities, volunteering. It's very difficult for them. So sometimes it's quite also like very tricky for us to advise them to like, oh, don't worry about your grades. If you're good at school, I guess you can always add more by doing something else, like, oh, maybe go outside, write your essay, come to us, review your essay with us. We can help you highlight something that you already did in your school time. So again, I really appreciate how holistic admissions is really beneficial for students because it really helps them elevate their um, school or like yeah, many things, many aspects from them. So yeah.
Right. So the thing is, how we encourage the students to be proactive to find more opportunities to participate from volunteerism, from the community engagement, extracurricular activities, rather than just worrying about their grades, whether it's good enough or it's high enough. All right, I think I'm going to pass my microphone into the floor. So if you do have a question, any question, please feel free to raise your hand. So we have one here.
Okay, hello, my name is Ruth, and thank you for the presentation. My question is about the GRE, and then in the unis that I want to apply, of course, it doesn't say blind, optional, blah blah blah. But for example, Harvard Law School, it says GRE is optional, and then the next one is Columbia. It doesn't say anything about GRE. And then when I looked at GRE, it's so difficult. It's not my forte. I think anything related with scholastic or test potensi academic or logic, it's hard for me. And then my time is running out because the deadline is December. My question is, how you mentioned about yeah, just submit it. It might increase your chance to come in. For example, how big it is, because like um, if it is not that big, then I will just forget about it, because after all, correct me if I'm wrong, like I'm doing law, I'm not a scientist, I'm a lawyer, so I'm not good at math, so bye, you know. But then if you as a admission specialist, you think that oh, I don't know if it is categorized as blind or not, but if you think that it's considered as optional, the one that I mentioned, then please advise, maybe I should study for GRE. And then also maybe from your point of view, maybe GRE will help in my study. Like, I don't know, like right now, I feel that GRE is very hard, but if you think that, oh, if you ace the GRE, it will ease you in your law school, then I will take it by all chance. Um, and then next question is that I'm currently unemployed because I want to focus on my mental health and also um, my application to master or even to international organization. But then it's been months. So by the time I submit application, will it be something that I should disclose? Like when you mentioned about give a context that you are unemployed for like 6 months, or they will not take it as something because you mentioned about study break. For me, it's a career break. Is it something that I need to disclose? Um, and the third one for the uni, it's very shallow, but I know that, oh, Harvard, it sounds so like amazing, and then but I know that I have to research more on the professor or the what is it, the concentration that I want to. Um, like, how should I arrange the what is it, the reasons I want to be? Maybe number one is professor, number two is the, you know what my question is actually, this is just between us. The biggest one is because my boyfriend is an American and my family is in the US. But like, of course, I'm not gonna really mention that. But like, how should we rate so then my application is strong? Thank you.
Yeah, great
All right, maybe
question.
from Ivy first. So
Yeah.
should Ruth take GRE test or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think really depends on which schools are you applying to. And you mentioned Harvard and Columbia, and these are very, very competitive schools. So yes, they could be test optional. And I would say if you are not confident in your school, in your score, and you're like, okay, this is not gonna look good on me. It's not gonna reflect well on my academic ability. Like you said, you're a lawyer. You're not gonna be great in math. That's fine. If you feel like your math score is not gonna reflect how great a student you are. So submitting that might be detrimental to you. So in those cases where you feel like this is not gonna be a good representation of your academic ability, don't submit it. And there are plenty of schools out there that completely don't require GRE. This is the same problem I had when I applied to masters. I've never taken one math class in college. So by the time when I applied to masters, I was like, okay, I don't know what any of this is on the math section. So I just only looked at universities or graduate schools that don't require a GRE.
All right, what about you, Kami? Because this is one of the most frequently asked questions from the advices. I'm pretty sure of that because like everyone is doubting themselves whether they can survive the test or not. So, what is your opinion?
Yes, and also I guess the same way with SAT and ACT as well. I guess again, it depends on the school. When it says optional, the problem is that sometimes it says optional, and then it causes confusion to our students to like, should I take it or not? Should I submit it? Whether my score is not too good, but it would look good on the applications in general or not. So again, sometimes when it says optional in there, sometimes we advise to like, how do you feel about taking the test? If you're very comfortable and you're very confident, you get a good score, then probably take it and submit it. But if you already taken this test, it doesn't really satisfy you in a way, then don't, especially when it is optional. But it is if it is stated. But if it is not stated whether or not you should submit your GRE or SAT, sometimes we also advise the students to ask to the university, like send them an email to the admissions, ask them whether or not GRE is optional or not, or is it required? Because as an advisor, we do not know how the admissions would feel about that. So if the case is not stated, go to the admissions, ask them directly.
And I would say no score is better than a bad score. So,
Okay, maybe the tips would be always write down your questions or always write down your concerns and send it to the admission specialist, the admission staff in the prospective schools, right? So the second question was, should we disclose the career break?
right.
How career break disclosure can affect our application?
Yes. So we typically call this a gap year. All right. So this happens for undergraduate students as well. And typically, we would like you to write a statement about your gap year. And I'm not really sure about graduate schools, and sometimes each graduate school might have different requirements or preference. Again, this is something that you have to email them to ask them about. But if you do write a gap year statement, typically the central theme would be showing what you did during this gap year. It could be focusing on your mental health, it could be working on yourself, improving English, maybe even test prepping, on anything that you did during the gap year, just showing that you're not just sitting around.
Yes, especially for the graduate students, sometimes their essays are very straightforward. They usually ask about your background, professional and academic background, and sometimes if you feel it is related to your background as well, I guess it's good to write them down on the essays as long as it is related to what you are trying to apply and how it affects you and your future careers. So again, it depends on like what the prompts are. Sometimes again, with graduate schools, they're usually very pretty straightforward. It probably depends difference from um, undergraduate admissions, which like you have more essays to write, sometimes more prompts, more questions. So I guess it depends on like how the essays you want to write. So yeah, I guess you can actually say you can actually tell that in the story if it is as long as it is related.
All right, hope that answers your concerns. So I think we can go to our third question, like how do you arrange the main reason of you choosing that prospective school?
Yeah, this is going to be very, very personal depending on what you want. Some students really rank prestigiousness as the highest, like school rankings. But I really tell students to ask themselves, what is the most important thing to you? Some people say, yeah, I want to go Harvard because that's how I'm going to get a big job. I'm going to join a huge law firm if I graduated from Harvard Law. Some students might think, I actually want to go to a big city. That's where I'm gonna get a lot of internship, a lot of networking and career opportunities. So they might choose Columbia because it's in New York City. Some people might choose it based on their professors. U Chicago Law is very prestigious because they have really great alumni. Obama family graduated from U Chicago, so they're like, okay, we want to utilize this network. We want to network with the professors and then have that connection because of this university. So again, this is very personal, depending on what you want, what you rank as the most important thing to you would be how you go about this list.
All right. So, Kama,
Yeah.
you've done a lot of essay reviews. So, what were your findings?
Yeah, not a lot, some. I guess I agree with Ivy here. Sometimes like it's good to state like what is the biggest motivations that you have to apply to that school. But again, sometimes like it's because of the prestige. Sometimes it's because of the future careers. Sometimes it is because of the city you're gonna live in because you're gonna study there. I guess it really depends on how you would like to deliver in the story of your essay. So that's sometimes what we do here with our advisors. Sometimes our students got confused of like, oh, how to write this, how to tell the stories. Sometimes we can help you brainstorm when you meet our advisors here. Book a session with us, and then we can start from the very beginning, like how to do the outlines. We can help you brainstorm what to write on your essay, and then find your the biggest motivations that you have, and then we can help you out deliver the essay.
All right. Seek advice from the person that you trust with, either the Education USA advisors, counselors, the staff admission, or maybe the thesis supervisors that you've worked with in the past, or um, otherwise you can seek mentorship from a person that you really trust. All right, I think we can go with another question from on-site audience. So we have another one here.
Yeah, thank you, Weaver. My name is Agus, and I want to more know about relating to the resume that in the presentation they just for one page. And is there any written rule that just should be one page? And is it possible that at the maximum at the pages? And yeah, or just yeah, it's to be good is for just one page at the maximum. Thank you.
All right. So do you have any specific guidelines on writing the resume or CV, and how it would affect the applicants if it doesn't meet their certain guidelines?
Yeah, I think when we're looking at the difference between resumes and CVs is the length. So resume also typically gears towards people who have worked experience. So in those cases, you're writing out your, especially this is for graduate students who are going into terminal degrees, or especially students who want to apply to MBA programs. You're typically going to submit a resume on about your work experience, what you have done. On CV, in comparison, is going to be more academic geared. So this typically happens for students who have already done their university bachelor's or master's and they're applying to maybe PhD. So they want to showcase what courses they have done in the university or maybe papers that you have already published. So in those cases, you're submitting a CV, and CV can be more than one pages.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same as Ivy. Sometimes we always advise our students to like try to write anything very concisely if it is real, especially if it is related to your the study that you're going to take or the major you're going to take. We try to make it only one page, especially if you're just like you're still in like 2 years or 3 years of working, and then you still have a lot of extended volunteering activities or something else that you want to put on your CV, oh, sorry, a resume. We usually stick to one page. But if you're already have extended experience, for example, like you've been in this field for 8 to 10 years, sometimes you want to write everything down, and everything is related to what you're trying to study or the major you're trying to get in the U.S. Then, yeah, maybe it can be more than 2 pages if it is necessary. But sometimes, yeah, we usually advise our students to like write it not more than one page.
All right, I have actually another question regarding to the resume. So, does the what we put in the resume should match on what we put in the essay? Since we have longer pages to write down on essays, so should we cover everything that we list down on the resume?
Yeah, no. That's a great question. So we always say in your essay, tell us something that we don't already see. So your resume is going to give us a very extensive list of experience, job titles, what you have done. An essay is a space, a very, very valuable space for you to tell us something else.
How would you advise your advisees?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we got that, and then we saw that in the essays too. They're just like listing what they have done in the past few years, especially when they're already working. The thing is, sometimes it's okay to mention like one or two jobs that you've done or like a research study you've done. The thing is, sometimes you have a unique experience that is, while you're doing this job, you found this situation or like you were caught in this kind of situation. So you want to explain that is related to your study or like related to the major you're gonna take. So that's, the space that you should write about that unique experience. So focus on the experience more than just listing that is already stated in the resume.
All right. Do we have more questions from on-site audience? All good. So I am going to ask another question regarding to the essay. So you have mentioned that we can tell more about the portfolio that we've been creating in our essays. So are we allowed to put the link, especially for those who are applying for the art school or music schools? They have their portfolio in audio format, in picture format. How do you
Yeah,
advise on that?
that's a great question. So, a lot of art schools, for example, SCAD, the new school, or Pratt, for example, they will use a thing called Slide Room. And so this is on top of application. So for example, Common App, students will submit a Common App, and then they will have to go to Slide Room to kind of upload their personal artwork. And these are either in JPEG, PNG formats. You upload your artwork, and then you also write a short description about what this artwork is about.
All right. So you don't have to cover the link on your essay, rather than just you can just submit it through the given platforms from each schools. And next, maybe from your personal experiences. Let's look back to the time when you were about to submit your application. What did you miss? Like, how would you advise the students? What are the things that you wish people knew earlier? Maybe from you, Ivy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. It was awful. No, just kidding. It was very stressful, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. A lot of high school students, when applying, probably feel very stressed. Some things I really wished I had known as a high school student is how much of a resource admissions counselors, university counselors are. I always just thought that they are scary people. They are super judgy. They are not gonna like me. And that is so not true because now I am one and I can tell I'm a nice person. But our job is to literally help students answer questions, and our email is always there. We also have one-on-one appointments that people can just sign up with. So I really wish that I had reached out to a lot more university counselors from the schools that I was applying to, just to ask them questions, um, and I could have avoided so many different mistakes as well. And another thing is, I think showing potential interest can be also a huge factor. And this is something I didn't know about. Universities in the US, obviously, we would love for you to all apply to us. But ultimately, what is the deciding factors is whether the student enroll and decide to come to that university or not. So if we know a student, if they apply and they are definitely going to come, they have shown very, very high interest. So we know that if we admit this student, they're going to come, we are going to be more likely to admit this student. So that's the same logistics with early decision, because if you apply early decision, the universities know, yes, you are going to come to this university.
All right. And how about you, Kame?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you too. That use the resources. As an advisor now that I'm now an advisor, I'd be like, yes, we're here. We're ready to help you out. Because like when I was applying to my program back then, I didn't know that I could actually use this kind of resources, and I was like, I felt like I was struggling alone or by myself, and it felt like so long. But also one thing that I would really want our students to understand is that like it takes a long time to actually prepare for this. It doesn't happen overnight or like 2 months. You need like longer time. You have to strategize, um, your the whole admissions, because sometimes like you want to reach out to the university or like to people who are counselors who are helping you out, but they're busy. I know that, yes, they're busy. They would reply to you as soon as possible, but it takes time too. So just, have enough time, talk to your advisors, talk to your counselors, university counselors, ask them way ahead so that, you yourself can understand like how much time you need to prepare for your admissions. Because sometimes, for example, for the standardized tests, especially the one that is very required, like the TOEFL or the IELTS, sometimes you have that worriness inside, like what am I gonna fail in the first try? So you will have to, get extra time to prepare for the second test and everything else.
So don't get bottled up, reach out, and also be early so you still have sufficient time to reach out to more counselors, to more advisors. And do you have any tips on how that is something that I highlight from your statement? Do you have any tips on how to show the prospective universities that we will be coming to your university, that I'm going to come to your university, I will choose you to be my future school?
Yeah, that is a great question. So if a university has early decision, apply to early decision deadline. Because I didn't mention this earlier on, some students might know there is a difference between early action and early decision. Early decision means that if you apply to this university and you accept it, you have to go. This is in the contract. You cannot get out of this. So this is one way. Another way for universities that only have regular or rolling admissions, for example, Pitt, it's like a first come, first serve basis. Um, Reaching out to the university counselors, setting up individual appointments, going to virtual events, or even just emailing us to let us know that I really, really like your university because of XYZ reasons. Um, a lot of students are really interested in our pharmacy programs, our pre-med programs, because we have a lot of medical related resources, and they're like, we definitely want to come to your university. So when we get these emails, we keep a record. We know these students on, you're interested. We have a system that, all the emails that come in to our system, they don't just disappear. We don't delete them. So we know who you are. We will keep track. And so email, meetings, on anything, just reach out.
All right. So I think we have almost reached the time limit. However, I need to ask you guys, maybe you guys can share with us one last closing statement before we wrap up. Maybe from Kami first.
Yes. So this is a very great opportunities with the holistic admissions right now. It's very easy, very simple for you guys to apply to US universities and reach out to us, Education USA advisors, as we can help you. We get to set your time, talk to us so that we can understand how to help you out. So no worries, relax. We'll be here to help you out.
Yes, absolutely. On piggyback off of what you just said, the resources are there. There are so many of them all around the world, in Jakarta, in the U.S., online. They're in abundance, but you need to take the first step to reach out to find them. But my advice, my tip is to be yourself. And I think that is the central idea of a holistic admission, is that admission committees, these universities, want to see who you are as a person. So I know sometimes it might take some courage to be vulnerable, but put yourself out there. Tell us your story, tell us your experience, because at the end of the day, we just want to learn who you are.
All right, can we give a big round of applause for our two wonderful speakers here? Thank you so much for sharing with us your previous experiences, sharing with us new insights, new knowledge, and it's pleasure for me to navigating this intriguing discussion. Hope that answers your concerns, your questions. So if you have any further questions, just email the prospective schools that you would likely apply, or you can reach out to Education USA Advisor here at America. I truly enjoyed our discussion so much. However, we need to wrap up. So unfortunately, and so earlier in this event, we asked the audience a social media quiz, and the question for today was: true or false? Holistic review is a university admission strategy that only assesses academic achievement, such as grades and test scores. And the correct answer to that is false. Holistic admission includes a review of grades, test scores, and the applicant's unique experiences. So shout out to today's lucky one at Agus Wahyudi from YouTube for answering correctly. Thank you so much everyone for participating in our social media quiz. And don't forget to tune in next time and catch Ching to get a live shout out from us. And you can also tune into our upcoming discussion, whether regarding the education and any other things related to the United States, by simply visiting our website at www.atmerica.or.id. You can also collaborate with us. You can submit your event ideas through our website and we will make it for you. Also, follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at ATMerica for interesting contents, giveaways, and so much more. And you can also always rewatch our previous events through our YouTube channel at ATMerica with double A in the end. With that, it is time to say farewell. Thank you so much again, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Hasna. See you on the next At America event. Bye, bye, everybody.